No quippy one-liner today, folks. We got an episode to get through. It would appear Rick and Morty Season 8, Episode 3 is the long-awaited, long-anticipated Citadel episode that we've all been waiting for. I think this is the first time we're actually seeing the Citadel in a, non-grand finale, non-grand opening to a season capacity. Well, I guess technically in Season 3, when we, found out that Evil Morty was President Morty, I guess that technically wasn't a finale or opening episode, but, it had the same vibes as one. In the last episode, we didn't see Morty at all, and in this episode, we don't see Rick either. Well, kind of. If you've been enjoying my coverage of Rick and Morty Season 8, then definitely be sure to go check out the previous 2 entries in my review series for Season 8. But if you're wondering why the reviewer won't shut the f*** up and just talk about the episode already, it's because I'm trying to pan this out for as long as humanly possible because I know you have a short attention span and I'm doing it deliberately to piss you off. Suck my balls. Luckily, I care about views just a little bit more than I care about pissing people off, so let us get down to business, shall we? No opening scene setting the premise on this one. Straight to credits here, baby. What the f*** are you holding, Morty? Why?
You're a million years late on that thing anyways.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. So Rick is cleaning up Citadel wreckage as Morty, passively aggressively fidget spins in the car, just when I thought we were rid of those damn things. Apparently the universe is also quite sick of those things, so it sends some high velocity debris to go and crash into Rick's car. The two go and find a place to land, and they find this floating asteroid that has a Morty town full of a bunch of Mortys. Remember that whole thing where the Citadel was like its own Morty market, and they were cloning Mortys there, essentially? Yeah, these are some of those clones. Oh yeah, and then there's also this, farmer Rick dude who lives on the outskirts of the asteroid. Rick and Morty land on this farmer's land to quickly make repairs, and of course the farmer Rick comes out and is being a whole big jerk about it. You know how hillbillies can be, you know how they are.
This is nice corn. Thank you.
They're all, get off my property or I'm gonna shotgun you in the face, weirdos. But they patch up the hole and leave Farmer Rick's land, with Rick making a snarky comment about how he doesn't even want to know what the deal with this Rick is. And if you've been paying attention, or have just watched this show at all, then you should know that this Farmer Rick dude is who we're gonna be following for the rest of this episode. It's one of those, swap, gotcha moments, how, oh yeah, the Adventure to Atlantis, when in reality it was a Citadel episode, or the whole Protago-Nick thing in the episode Full Meta Jacket, where Protago-Nick turns a random security guard into the protagonist for a couple minutes. But this Farmer Rick lives a pretty humble life. He makes distilled corn, alcoholic water, I presume. He drives around in his hover truck and takes care of his mutant animals. He's even got a patented little device that separates the sick animals from the non-sick ones to keep other ones from getting sick. Very smart, very practical too. Farmer Rick also appears to be in the market for salvaging old processors from the old Citadel, and he goes to the arcade pub market. It's kind of an all-in-one, and it comes with a patented Morty who tells Rick every time he comes into the pub arcade, I'm just gonna call it the arcade, he tells Rick every time he comes into the arcade that they're closed. But just as Rick and the Morty who runs the arcade get down to business, some other Ricks show up. They quickly and swiftly wreak havoc on the entirety of this Morty town and kidnap as many Mortys as they possibly can. And, they shoot Farmer Rick a few times. Actually, a lot more than a few times. It turns out they're kidnapping all these Mortys to gather biological material and genomes to once again try and start up the Citadel's whole cloning manufacturing business. Also, all these Ricks are clones as well. Figured I'd point that out. When they return to the rebuilding of the Citadel, one of the Ricks who was on the raid goes to collect his payment with the classic long, awkward elevator ride. Also, that is a wide Rick. That dude is wide. Oh look, a robber baron Rick trying to rebuild the Citadel and paying his workers in mere drops of portal fluid. Talk about squeezing supply to increase demand. Back to the asteroid, Farmer Rick isn't dead because, well, he's a Rick. Rick gets back in his truck and drives home, only to find that his entire house and animals have just been completely and utterly trashed by those Ricks who performed the raid. And Rick proceeds to drop 3 of the most powerful F-bombs ever.
Fuck!
As Ricks tend to do in moments of great emotional crisis, he gears up, fixes up his truck, and gets ready for an all-out revenge tour against this fledgling Citadel and its cloned Ricks. But on his way to the fledgling Citadel, he learns he picked up 2 stragglers by accident. two of the Mortys who were running the arcade. Of course, he's outraged and tells the two Mortys to fuck off, and I gotta say this just right out of the gate, Farmer Rick's F-bombs have some recoil to them. Editor, play some of the F-bombs from this truck scene.
What the fuck? Get the fuck out of my car! Fucking Mortys.
Dr. Morty, or Doc, the one with the cane, makes awkward comments about how this is just like being on adventures with Rick, just like in the good old times. He mentions how his Rick used to take him in summer to the park, to which Arcade Morty reveals that that memory is completely and totally fabricated. Turns out he has the exact same memory, and so do all the other Morty clones, presumably. Whoever cloned those Mortys and filled their heads with fabricated memories must have been really fucked up. I wonder who it could have been. Over at the fledgling Citadel, the cloned Ricks are talking about what they're gonna do and where they're gonna jump to once they get enough portal fluid. One of them wants to jump to a place where, racism is cool. That is a direct quote. I have zero comment. But Farmer Rick makes his formal entrance by catching a bottle that one of the clone Ricks threw, takes a swig of it, and proceeds to get a triple headshot. This Rick ain't playing around. Arcade Morty is also kicking some serious ass, and is that seriously Ebola that also decapitates its victim? Just when I thought this show ran out of new and creative ways to kill things, it always surprises me. Doc gets shot, Arcade Morty and Farmer Rick are pinned down, and they both get in some pretty solid final words.
We bite it here. You were always a good customer.
Yeah, you always had exact change.
Now that is a compliment. If you pay in cash and you go to a place and you always pay in cash and the cashier there always has exact change for you, that's a real hero right there. They light the building ablaze, which gives them enough opportunity to escape, and Doc bleeds out, being thankful that he's bleeding to death and not burning to death. And yeah, I'd pick bleeding to death any day of the week over the burning. As they make it to the cloning bay where all the other Mortys are being kept, they get surrounded. And Robber Baron Rick reveals that not only is Farmer Rick not a clone, but he's also the Citadel's former lead on Morty cloning. The Rick clones give him his old job back, and you think that would be the end of the episode. Turns out Ricks from other dimensions really do suck that much. Mortys pay the price as a result, and then we see our two main boys having a good time to show us how special our Rick really is and how much he's changing. You'd think that'd be the end of it. But fuck that shit. Farmer Rick makes this like Hulk-ass Morty clone that just starts wreaking havoc everywhere, and then Farmer Rick goes full Unabomber on the rest of this fledgling Citadel in this fucking awesome action sequence. And there's this one scene during the initial breakout where Farmer Rick does some cowboy-ass shit. He takes his laser revolver and does like a pa 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 and gets like a triple headshot in less than a second. Guess he was a pretty solid Rick after all. And a really good fucking shot, too. Also, one of the clone Ricks attempts to get all the portal fluid from the Robber Baron Rick. Yeah, he gets shot by a desk gun. I told you, this show always surprises me when it comes to the ways it likes to kill things. I mean, a fucking desk gun? Are you serious? I wish my desk had a gun, that'd be great. Anytime someone tries to interrupt my recordings, I could just be like, yeah, I have a desk gun. You wanna really interrupt me? Are you sure? As they make it to the ship they're gonna escape on, Farmer Rick points out how he doesn't actually like Mortys, he's just really good at making them. And in some weird compliment, I guess, he cites Arcade Morty as proof of his work and how he's a professional. Arcade Morty tells Farmer Rick to not give himself credit for that, and Farmer Rick takes that pretty literally. He decides to not escape with the Mortys, saying that he's, quote, not giving himself credit. And in a rare moment of Rick's sincerity, and, you know, in his own Rick sort of way, Rick tells the Morty clones to go and, quote, make some memories that aren't fabricated. That, Sir Farmer Rick, is a damn fine piece of advice. And it's hella sweet. Initiate big final stand action montage to show a final act of heroism, plus a side of Rick fucking with the antagonist one last time, check. And after the Citadel remnants blow up, again, Arcade Morty declares that it's time for all of them to grow up. No more Morty towns, no more Citadels. It's time for all of them to make their own memories and call their own shots. How many fucking times has the Citadel been destroyed at this point? They go to a variety of planets, dropping off all the Mortys in a place they feel they belong, and when Arcade Morty is the last one left, he goes back to the asteroid to have a solo, solemn moment for his fallen hero. That is until our Rick and Morty show up because Morty lost his fidget spinner. Rick yells at Morty saying that he'll be so pissed if it ends up being in between the seats of their car, and of course Morty points out that he's already looked there. As Rick notices that Arcade Morty buried his Rick and, someone else with the smaller grave, he goes on and on and on about how Arcade Morty probably killed his Rick and how the grave is a warning. And he keeps going on and on about it for a little bit until Arcade Morty finally snaps and is like, hey, I didn't kill him, douchebag. Quite frankly, upon my first viewing of this episode, I thought he just wasn't gonna say anything and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna ignore these guys. I have mourning to do. But Morty finds his cringe spinner and Rick admits that, he was wrong about it being in the seats and he shouldn't have been so angry and how, he's admitting that, he's wrong now and he's doing all that. Character development. Our Morty makes a comment about how Rick is changing in a really positive way with a big old grin, and they both portal home, leaving Arcade Morty to have the last word.
Assholes.
Credits, please! Gotta say, this was a pretty interesting episode. In the last episode, we only saw Rick, and Rick was kind of the main focus, but in this episode, Rick and Morty kind of weren't the main focus. Not literally, anyway. I think this whole Citadel side plot with the clones and Farmer Rick and the Morty clones and all that is meant to be some sort of subtle summary or metaphor for Rick's entire arc across the whole show. And I think this viewpoint is best summed up and best supported by the actual ending of this episode. Rick and Morty come to find something insignificant of Morty's, Rick is all pissed about it, and there's some supposedly crazy shit happening in the background. AKA their assumptions that Arcade Morty killed his Rick, being the crazy shit in question. The crazy shit gets resolved, Morty finds the thing that was insignificant to Rick, but significant to him, Rick admits he was wrong, and they portal on home with a smile. That's basically Rick and Morty's entire dynamic summarized in one short scene. And Arcade Morty calling the two of them assholes is to point out that, yeah, Rick can still be an asshole, and Morty can be an asshole too. But Rick is changing, and Morty is appreciating it and positively pointing it out. The Citadel episodes before this one were all these big grandiose openings or grandiose finales that were sort of setting up or paying off big revelations that were related to both Rick's backstory and his relationship with Morty. In season 1, it was the whole evil Rick situation and Morty feeling like he was nothing more than a human cloaking device to Rick and instead of an actual valued sidekick. But by the end of it, Rick shows some surface level but still significant gratitude in the form of saying that his Morty would be the Mortiest. In season 3, it was setting up the whole evil Morty plotline and showing us how Rick subjugate and take advantage of their Mortys. That whole episode was a display of how cruel and abusive Ricks can be to their Mortys, in contrast to our Rick and Morty who have a slightly better relationship. Because at the very end of that episode, we saw that Rick and Morty had a really fun time in Atlantis and were just generally having a good time together, as opposed to all the Ricks and Mortys in the Citadels who are just constantly hating each other. In season 5's finale, we see how fucked up Rick's backstory is and why he is the way he is, but how that isn't an excuse to mistreat or abuse Morty. It also showed us just how far a Morty is willing to go just to get away from Rick. But in contrast, it also showed us how far Ricks are willing to go to protect and do right by their Mortys. That's especially embodied in the scene where they were escaping on that pod of the Citadel, and it showed booster control must operate with partner, and Rick extended his hand to Morty to come help him. And now here in the present, the Citadel episode isn't some massive revelation or reveal about Rick's backstory or whatever, but rather an echo just distinguishable enough to show us how far our Rick and others have progressed, both for the sake of themselves and for the sake of their Mortys. And quite frankly, I think it was also meant to just finally put the Citadel to rest. No more Morty towns, no more Citadels. From now on, Ricks and Mortys are carving their own paths, and quite frankly, our Rick is carving a much better path now than he has in the past. Whew, that was quite the episode, huh? Episode 2 is definitely still my favorite of season 8, so far anyway, but this episode was nothing short of fantastic. The writing was good, the humor didn't feel too, try-hardy, if you catch my drift, the voice acting was on point, if I do say so myself, and it should be the final goodbye to the Citadel. We will never see the Citadel ever again, 100% confirmed, no more Citadel, never, they will never bring it back. But what did you think? Is my whole metaphorical view on this episode and how it represents Rick and Morty's dynamic across the seasons of the show just reading way too much into it? Or do you agree with my takes, and do you really think this is the last we'll see of the Citadel? I don't know, but feel free to leave all your thoughts and opinions on both the commentary and the episode itself down in the comments below. Also, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like and sub button while you're down there, especially if you want to hear my thoughts on the rest of the season. And if you really like the way I do things around here and you want to show me a little bit of extra support to keep this channel running, then definitely consider becoming a channel member. Not only do you get access to a whole bunch of exclusive rewards, but you also directly support me in the process. Also, just to say it one more time, once we hit 10 channel members, 10 consecutive members, 10 amazing people who will support me, I will start doing weekly members-only live streams where you, the members, get to decide what I suffer through. Well, that was a fun episode. I think I'm gonna go see if I can get in on some of that Citadel wreckage that... Oh, crap, the portals are broken. God damn it, did someone frack the curve again? Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to sit here and stare into your eyes intensely until the portal comes back on.